Okay, so we're going to get started. Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed your extra long Thanksgiving break. Obviously, that presents a big challenge for the class. And I got an email from a couple of you wondering about assignments and whatever. The truth is, I couldn't get concrete answers until yesterday and or today because there was a bunch of emails flying around from the college saying certain classes we're going to have to make up time, and there was a certain number of contact hours, and you may find in other classes that there's things that you have to do to make up the time. So I was waiting to find out whether we were going to have any make-up contact hours or what before I kind of developed the plan going forward. It appears, as of right now, that we don't have any make-up contact hours that are required, which means that the semester will proceed and end as normal, with no extra classes, no extra class time required. I reserve the right to change that if I get an email today saying, guess what, you have to make up contact hours. But I'm going forward saying they should have notified me by now in terms of how we move forward. So the good news is I don't have to make anything up. You guys don't have to make anything up. We don't have to have any extra class times or whatever. The bad news is there's essentially 5 lectures left in the semester for me to talk to you. I have more content than can really fit in those 5 lectures. And so I've been stressed out about how do I make the best of what we have. So here is my plan, and the calendar's updated, but for some reason it's not loading on the website, so I'll figure out why that is. But I want to kind of run through the plan so that you guys know what's happening and what I'm cutting out. The good news for you is if you really want the content that I'm cutting out, you can just watch last year's lecture and get that same content. Like I said, I apologize, but there's not really a way for me to cram more time into less time, if you know what I mean. It doesn't work. So today we are going to do lecture 122, which is what I had planned before the break. It's AutoCAD and Illustrator doing collage work in those. So that will happen today. On Wednesday, we're going to skip lecture 123 and we're going to go to lecture 124. I also, by the way, am going to keep the lecture numbers consistent. So that way you know that we skipped 123 and I'm doing 124. So on Wednesday we'll do 124. Also, I have extended the deadline for when your assignment 105 is due until Monday, a week from today, December 3rd. So you don't have to do anything, you don't have to turn anything in. On that Monday, we will do lecture 127, which is portfolio covers. So you see that I skipped a few more in there. And then we'll kind of proceed in order. We'll do 128 on Wednesday and 129 on the following Monday of finals week. And that gets us through the end of the semester. So there's a few that got cut out. The other thing that I decided to cut out was your assignment 106. So there will not be an assignment 106. We will still cover the stuff for assignment 106, but trying to cram the assignment in, and I have to remove a couple of the lectures pertaining to assignment 106. I just didn't think it was fair. So assignment 105 will be your last official assignment that is due. That's kind of a good and bad thing. It's good because you don't have to do assignment 106. It's bad because it just meant all of the assignments' value went up a little bit. So that last 7% that was reserved for assignment 106 gets redistributed for the other assignments. It is what it is. But you don't have to do it. So I've cut that out as well. Does that kind of make sense for what we're doing? And like I said, I'm going to try to keep everything in order so you know what you missed. And I'll still post the lectures. Hold on. Yeah. Sure, just look last semester. Look up last semester's. Assignment 106 is pertaining to, hold your question, I will get there. Assignment 106 pertains to basically modeling in SketchUp and then doing collage work from SketchUp in Photoshop. And so I will still lecture on that topic, but we won't have an official assignment where you have to do it and turn it in. You'll still do it for exercises, but it won't be officially graded. Yeah, Kelly? That means it is not part of your final portfolio. If you want to turn it in and you want to put it in your final portfolio, by all means. You're still going to do not all of them, but some of them, because we'll still do them in the exercise format. They just won't be quite as formal.
So we can just do what if we want to, we can put it in.
whatever you did, if you want to, you can put it in. If you don't feel like it turned out well enough and you want to cut it out, that's okay too. So in terms of the final portfolio, you'll only be required to have 101 to 105 as part of it. Another question? It is finals week. It's the Wednesday of finals week. It's Wednesday the 12th. So Wednesday the 12th will be our last class meeting. So you'll come here like normal. I believe it's the normal time, not the finals got messed up because they changed the semester around. So you'll come here and essentially hand me a physical portfolio. You'll make sure you've printed it and can give it to me in physical format. You will also post it in digital format. I'll have a little survey for you guys to fill out. You'll fill it out online. It helps me get feedback on what you liked about the class, what assignments are good, etc. I'll bring donuts because I always bring donuts. It's one of 2 days per year that I get to eat donuts, so it's a good thing. So I'll have a bunch of donuts for you guys to eat. You can look at each other's portfolios, and that's it. There's no big lecture. There's nothing fancy. There's no test. There's nothing. It's just hopefully good for you. You can relax a little bit. Stress out about all your other stuff that you are supposed to be doing. Any other questions? No. Okay, that's good. So like I said, I apologize that it is the way it is. It's the cost of the smoke for us. Okay, so today we're going to talk exercise 122, and I know this is like ancient history for you guys because you've forgotten entirely everything that we have been talking about because you haven't been here for so long. But we're going to try to pick up where we left off. And so what I have, by the way, there's no handout for you today. You got this handout last time. You may or may not have saved it. If you didn't, just look at it online. I didn't make new copies today. I didn't make new copies for the other class either. It was just kind of the way things worked out. I wasn't exactly sure what I was teaching until I found out what the trajectory was. So you can pull up exercise 122 on the course website. This will walk through everything. If you really want a printed version, you can download and print yourself and go pick it up if you want to. So here it is, exercise 122. This is what we're going to be working on today. I went ahead, and as we get started here, I opened up where we were last semester or last class when we were working on this. Yeah, I know it feels like last semester, right? And that was the AutoCAD layout, where we had each of our elevation views laid out with our floor plan on a 24 by 36 sheet. This should look familiar to all of you. Okay, that's good. Couple review things. One, all of these viewports are on a non-printing layer. So I tend to keep my no print layer as a green layer, and it has the little no print icon next to the printer. That means it's not going to print. I've laid all of these out. There is no title block on this page. It's just the views themselves. And when I'm done with this, I'm going to go ahead and export it. And I'm going to do that by going to the print icon. And so I'll click on plot. We're going to continue to plot a single sheet. And my guess is you already did this, but I'm just going back a few steps and reviewing here. The plotter should be DWG to PDF, which we set up originally when we did the layout. And so all I have to do is say OK. When that happens, I'm going to choose where to save it. And let me get into my flash drive here. And let me create a folder for today. There we go. And let me call this there we go. And I'll go ahead and click on Save. And when I'm done, that will open up in Acrobat so that I can see a quick preview of my drawing. OK, yeah, it showed up. That's good. We can go ahead and close that for now. And I'm going to minimize AutoCAD. I'll minimize Chrome here as well. And now that I have that created as a PDF, I'm going to go find it in my flash drive. So this was in exercise 122. And there it is. And instead of just double-clicking on it, which would open Acrobat, I'm going to right-click on this file. And I'm going to go to Open With. And of course, these computers don't show Illustrator as one of the options. So I'm going to go ahead and say choose another app, more apps, and there's Adobe Illustrator. Why you would want to open this in Word, I have no idea. But we're going to pick Adobe Illustrator as our choice, and I'll go ahead and say OK. And that's one of the neat things about a PDF file. It is an Adobe file, but Illustrator can read it natively. So we can just work, instead of on an Adobe Illustrator, a .ai file, we can work straight on the PDF. And the other thing about this is that AutoCAD, when it creates it, actually builds it as a bunch of live lines that we can actually select and work with. So it's not just a flat image file. It's something that we can really work with. Let me press Control-0 so I can see the whole screen here. There it is. And we can see that most of my lines came through. Most of my line weights came through well. So I'm reasonably happy. Before I get too far into it, though, I do want to take some time and double-check line weights and make corrections as necessary. So a couple things. When I first look at this Illustrator file, there are, if I go to click on any one of the objects here, they're contained within the same viewports, those same invisible viewports that were set up in AutoCAD. That's not necessarily a bad thing. However, Illustrator likes to see the layers a little bit differently. So I'm going to come over here to Layers in my Layers tab. I'm going to expand Layer 1, and you're going to see that I have 5 clip groups showing. Each of these clip groups corresponds to one of the viewports. They're a little bit difficult to work with when they're clip groups, so I want to get out of a clip group and just make it a regular group. So I'll select the first layer here, this first clip group, and I'll go to the little flyout menu, the 4 lines in the upper right corner, and I'll come down to Release Clipping Mask. And nothing changes other than it changes from clip group to group. So you can't really see anything, but this will make it a lot easier to work with. I'll click on the next one down here and say Release Clipping Mask. Next one down here, Release Clipping Mask. Next one down here, Release Clipping Mask. Last one here, Release Clipping Mask. So I want to make sure that I do it for each one. I am noticing that a few of yours, when they came up, weren't oriented correctly. They were sideways. That's a problem sometimes in Illustrator. Let me show you really quick how to fix that if yours was in that scenario. Let me get it, and then I'll walk you through the correction to it. Is it not? OK, so for some of you, it came in like this. And so I just wanted to correct that in case it does come in like this. Mine didn't, but if it does, you're going to use something called the Artboard Tool. Come down on the left side here. It's almost to the bottom. It looks like a page with a little cursor in the upper left corner. When I click on that, we see that I have Artboard 1 showing. When Artboard 1 is showing, if I go to the Properties tab over here, I can switch from my portrait into my landscape orientation. That's essentially switching the page size. Once I'm done with that, I can go to my black arrow and select all of my lines. I can do that by dragging a box around them or also pressing Control-A to select all. Then I'll move to one of the corners, and I'll get an arrow with an arc on it and 2 sides. That will allow me to rotate my drawings. If I hold down Shift while I rotate, it will jump to 90 degrees, and now I'm oriented in this direction. Hopefully it won't be an issue, but I wanted to at least bring that up just in case it presents itself for you. OK, so now that I have my orientation correct, I also have my layers correct so that they're in groups, I can start to really work with any one of these drawings. Let's look at the plan first. So I did Control+ to zoom in a little bit here. And if I wanted to edit something on the plan, for example, I could double-click to get into the group. And so this is called Group Isolation Mode. And when I do that, I get this gray bar that appears at the top, which is getting me inside of the group, which doesn't allow me to work with the other objects. So I'm isolating just this one group. And I can then go in and make adjustments. So if I took this path, for example, and I went to Properties, and I said, you know what, I want that to be a little bit thicker, I could say, oh, there we go, there it is at 2 point, and you know what, that looks a little bit better. In which case I might go back and select the rest of the lines, etc. It's a lot of work to go through and select them, which is why I would encourage you to do it in AutoCAD, not in Illustrator. But I like to point out that it is something that you can do if you feel the need to make that adjustment. So this was, let me just going to undo it for a second, like that. One more. Nope. There we go. But there are some times where you just need to make a couple little adjustments, and you can do that in Illustrator. Sometimes you might need to go into the one of the elevations and thicken up that baseline. That might be a desired result. If that was the case, we could up the baseline a little bit. So there it is at 5 points, much thicker. Obviously, I'd want to make sure that each of these correspond. To get out of the group isolation mode, I come up to this little back arrow and step my way back out, and then double click to get in. This one was also at 5. That. I'll step my way out, come down to this one. Step my way out, and end with this one, and back out. So that's the advantage of keeping them as groups, is that you can go into each in isolation mode and kind of focus on a particular piece. And maybe I decide that those lines are too bold now. It's just something that you can make adjustments to after the fact. I think it's easier to do it in AutoCAD, but at least you're aware that that can be done. OK, so now I have this where I'm looking at it, and I'd like to kind of further enhance the drawing. So we had worked in AutoCAD to do some hatching. It worked sometimes. Sometimes we wanted to fill in the walls of the plan, for example. We can do that in Illustrator as easily as we can do it in AutoCAD. It's just a little bit different in terms of the process. I showed you how to do it in AutoCAD. I want to show you how to do it in Illustrator as well. So before I work on any of this, however, I always like to make a duplicate of the layers just in case I make a mistake. And so it's always a good idea to have that backup layer. And so here under Layer 1, with it selected, I'm going to go to the little flyout menu, and I'm going to say Duplicate Layer 1. And there it is. I have Layer 1 copy, and I have Layer 1. You could call one of these Backup. I could say this is Backup, just in case. I'm going to put that down at the bottom of the layer stack, and I'll go ahead and turn it off because I don't need it. Now that I have a backup, so I can go back to, I want to fill in some of this plan. So let me click on it, and I'll double click to get into my layer isolation mode so that I can work directly on this. I'm going to select all of my objects, like that, and I'll go into the Edit menu, under Object, Live Paint, Make. It's Alt-Control-X if you want to use the keyboard shortcuts. So I went to Object, Live Paint, Make, and my group changes. It has these little stars in the corners. And from there, I can use the Live Paint tool, which is available underneath the Shape Builder tool, or you can press K on the keyboard to get to it. It's called the Live Paint bucket. And this is going to allow me to fill in certain regions. So first thing I need to do is make sure that I have a color to fill in with. And I usually pick a bright color, something like a red. Yeah, or a blue or whatever. Doesn't matter what the color is, but this is going to help later on with the selection process. So let me zoom in just a little bit, and I'm going to fill in every one of the walls with this color. So this is kind of like doing a hatch in AutoCAD, where we're going through and we're making little selections. And now I've selected all of those. Now it's entirely possible I might want to work with the floors as well. If that's the case, I'll change my color to something else, and I can fill in where the floors would be. Like that. That works. And I'm not going to worry about any of the other fill regions for right now. So I filled those in. When I'm done, I'm going to come over here to the properties, and I'm going to come down and choose, where'd it go? OK, well, I'm not going to worry about that for right now. Let me go ahead and back out. I'm going to use my direct select arrow right here to select just one of the colors. So we'll pick this, this object here, I hope. Let me back all the way out for just a second. All right, I have to expand the live paint group, but somehow it's not letting me expand the group. Hold on a second. OK, so there used to be a button, why it's not showing up here, that says expand. It's not there. So with my live paint group selected, which it still is, I'm going to go up to the object menu. I'm going to go to live paint, and then I'm going to click expand. I wish the button was still there. I don't know what happened to it. Once I've done that, I can use the direct selection tool, the white arrow, to select any one of these filled in regions. So let me select the orange filled in region for my walls. And I'm going to select this one, but I want all of them selected. So using the select menu, I can go up to select and then same fill color, which is going to select all of the orange. I'm going to go to my layers, and I'm going to create a new layer, I hope. Let me back out of my groups for just a second. There we go. Let me select same fill color. There it is. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call this new layer walls. And I'm going to move all of these objects onto the walls layer. So they're selected. To move the objects from one layer to another, I'm going to select this little box next to where it is in layer 1. And I'm going to drag that up onto the walls layer. And it's going to change all of the walls onto the walls layer. And then I'll go ahead and turn it off. Next thing, I'll do the same thing with the blue floors. I'll select the floor. I'll go to select, same, and we're going to do fill color to get all of them. I'll create a new layer, and we'll call this floors. And I'll move these objects onto the floors layer. So I'll click and drag those up onto the floors layer. So now I have the walls and I have the floors each on a separate layer. With them like that, I can go ahead and change, for example, the color of those. So I could, with just those being highlighted, I could select them all. And I could come in here and I could say, you know what, I want them to be a certain percentage gray. So maybe I'd say I want them to be 30% gray. So it would be 0, 0, 0, and 30. Gives me a nice light gray color. I can then turn on my layer backup, which is my original undisturbed. Let me move it on top of everything else. And we can see that I was able to change the fill color of those walls. If I didn't like them, we could come back and I could select those walls again. And I could say, you know what, I wanted them to be a little bit darker. So let's change that to 50% gray. And now those are just a little bit darker. So it's pretty easy to make those adjustments. The floors, if I were to turn the floors back on, I can do something similar, where I could take the floors and say select. Let me just turn off the walls. I'll select all the floors. And I could change them to be a much lighter gray. So maybe a 10% gray. I could say 0, 0, 0, 10%. And they have just a little bit of gray to them. And maybe that helps distinguish what are floors and what are walls. versus my line drawing. So it's subtle, but it helps the floor plan pop out just a little bit from its surrounding context. Sometimes you want a little bit more texture to these so that they're not quite so stark. Computer graphics are always very sharp. Maybe you want to make it a little bit dirtier. I have a couple different options for you, one of which is available on the course website. If you go to your Resources tab, come down to Swatches, I have some sets based on Prismacolor markers. For those of you that have worked with inking markers and that sort of thing, these are designed to mimic what it would be like if you colored it in by hand. If you download the architectural set, for example, this will match up with the architectural set of Prismacolor markers. The colors should be the same. We're not doing color matching on our printing, so it's not perfect, but they're pretty close. Once you've downloaded that, you'll want to expand it and save it on your flash drive. It's taking a little while to download. I already have it expanded on my flash drive, so I can go back over into Illustrator. And I'm going to open up the Swatches window. So I'm going to go to Window and then open Swatches right there. And with the Swatches window open, I'm going to click on the flyout menu, the 4 lines in the upper right corner, and say Open Swatch Library, Other Library. And I'll go find that architectural swatch library on my flash drive. So I have a folder for Resources, a folder for Adobe Illustrator, a folder for Swatches, and there's my Prismacolor architectural, and there's the architectural fills. The AI file here that I'm going to load, and I don't know if you guys can see this. Yeah, you can see a little bit on here. They have some streaks in them, as if you actually colored with the markers. So it's a little bit more casual than just the color itself. So I'm going to go ahead and open that. And there they are. That's the architectural set of markers, or what Prismacolor deems the architectural set. And essentially what I can do then is I could select all of these objects. So let me go into Select, Same, Fill Color. And I could say, you know what, I want to apply one of the architectural swatches. Maybe something like that. It's the color, and it's also a little bit of a marker texture. On the projector, you're not going to be able to see the marker texture as well as on your own individual screen. Sometimes if I pick one of the darker ones, you can see it a little bit better. I can see it on my screen. I wonder if you can see it there. No. I don't think you're going to be able to see it. Even if it was the black one, I don't think you can see it. So you'll have to try it out for yourself. And so you can play around with what the various color options are. If you don't like the architectural marker set, there are a few others that you could download. Some of the sets that I really like are the warm grays or the French grays, which are just grays but with marker streak pattern to them. And so the same thing applies. I would go into my swatches, click the flyout menu, and I'd go into Open Swatch Library, Other Library. And once again, I go into my Resources folder and into Swatches, and I could go to the warm grays. And there you go, there's the warm grays. I'll pull those out separately. Going from 10% all the way up, I think that's a 50% gray. You can get darker, etc., depending. So somewhere in here, yeah, probably like that. That's a warm gray, 20%, 30%. Looks pretty good. I can do the same thing with my walls. I could use that same swatch pattern for the walls. So let me go into my walls layer. And with that selected, there they all are. I could come back in and pick a slightly darker for my walls, maybe a 50% gray, maybe 60%, something like that. And that would fill in those walls. And then we can turn back on the floors. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm doing a little bit of collage work after the fact in Illustrator to enhance my plan a bit. And in this case, I think it did a fairly successful job. Somehow I missed this that region in my fill, but it's OK. So the next thing that we can do is I could identify what are windows on this particular elevation view, because I think that would help enhance this just a little bit. So I could do the same thing. Let me go. I'm going to turn off my layer backup. I'll turn off my walls. I'm going to turn on my original layer right here. And I'll get into this. There we go, this group. I'll double click to get inside, and I'm going to select it all. I'll go back up to my object, Live Paint, Make. I'm just going to make it that Live Paint group. Sorry, let me make these marker sets a little bit smaller there. Then I'll go to my Live Paint tool, which is right there. I could press K to get to it. And I'm going to go ahead and change my color. So let's make it kind of a blue color. And I'm going to fill in each of the places where there is some glass. OK, so now I have all of those filled in. When I'm done, I'll go up to Object, Live Paint, Expand. That breaks apart the Live Paint group and will also allow me to use the Direct Select tool, the white arrow, to select one of the glass panes. Then I can go up to Select, Same Fill Color to get all of them. And I need to get out of isolation mode, back out. There we go. One more time, let me select the first one. I'll go to Select, Same Fill Color. I'll create a new layer, and we'll call this Windows. I'm going to call it Windows 1, because I may do it in multiple locations. And then I'll go ahead and put all of these objects on that Windows layer. So I'll click and drag the little square up onto the Windows 1 layer, and then we can turn off everything but the windows. So in this case, I could turn back on the line drawing, and all of my windows are at least shaded in blue. Maybe that blue isn't quite the right blue. I could select one of them and go back to Select, Same Fill Color. And I could adjust the color of blue so that it's a much lighter shade of blue. Maybe like that. And maybe that looks a little bit better in terms of designating that as a set of windows. Sometimes, however, using some kind of a texture on the background makes it a little bit more realistic or easier to see. And in that context, I'm going to go find an image of some clouds. So let me do a Creative Commons search. So search.creativecommons.org. There we go. And I'm going to search for cloudy sky. And let's do a Google image search of it. And there we go. Essentially what I'm looking for is I'm looking for some nice clouds in a sky. Maybe something like that looks pretty good. Really any one of these would be just fine. I already have a cloudy sky. I've downloaded them. I've saved them on my flash drive, so I'm not going to download one of these specifically, but you could download any one of these and make it work. And so now I need to bring in that cloudy sky. So let me go ahead and go to File and then Place. And I'm going to find a cloudy sky. It would be under Resources. It would be under Collage. It would be under Skies, Cloudy Skies, and there we go. And maybe this one. I'll go ahead and place it. And drop it right there. It's way too big. Let's make that a little bit smaller. I'm going to hold down Shift. Let me use the regular black arrow here. Hold down Shift. Make that a little bit smaller. Something like that. Let me zoom in here. OK, so now what I want to have happen is I want for all of the little shapes that were representative of my windows, I want for all of those to cut out this image. And this is something that used to be, I would say, the most important thing that I would teach during the semester. And tides have changed a little bit. Strategies have changed a little bit. Now we do a lot more Photoshop masking, which is what I emphasize. This, however, is something called a clipping mask. And in Illustrator, it's one of the more powerful tools that you can do. It is available. I have step-by-steps on exactly how to do this. If you go into the tutorials and go to Illustrator, they're right here under, let me see here, complex clipping masks. This is what I'm doing. And it will walk you through how to do this. And I might even have one that is complex clipping mask from a live paint. So in this case, it will walk you through everything that I just did. And there's even a little video that should pop up eventually that shows this. And so anyway, it walks you through all of those things. So if you get stuck or you get a little bit lost, it's there, and you can watch that. OK, so let me look specifically. Let me turn off my background altogether. Let me look specifically just at this Windows 1 layer. So on this Windows 1 layer, I have the image, and I have all of the little squares that are in the background. Let me turn off the image for just a second, and let me look at all of these. So I have all of these together. They're in a group right now, but I want them all to become one object, not a bunch of individual little objects. And I can do that by going up to the Object menu, and I can go to Compound Path. If I can find it, there it is, Make. And that will change all of these from individual little objects into one object. And there it is listed as a compound path instead of a group. That's good. I'm going to make sure that the compound path is on top of my image file. So the compound path is on top of the image file. This, by the way, has to be in this order for it to work. And this is one of the stickier things in Illustrator, is it's very, very specific. You can't have more than one path. It has to be just one path, and it has to be a compound path if you have something that's complex like this. Once you have that, it has to be on top of the linked image file. Once this is the case, I'm going to select the main layer itself, the Windows 1 layer, and I'm going to come up to the flyout menu, and I'm going to say Make Clipping Mask. And when I do that, it's going to clip the image in the shape that I had selected there. So it's essentially clipped the image to show just the sky with the windows. At that point, I could turn back on my layer backup, and we'd see that the glass is represented by the sky, not by just the colored region, which can be a very successful way of representing the sky. Sometimes this needs to be adjusted a little bit. Sometimes it's a little too dark. If I select it, go into Properties, I can change my opacity right here. We could drop it down so that wasn't quite so dark. It's amazing the difference in seeing it on the screen projector versus on my screen. This is too light, but on the screen projector it looks reasonable. So it is what it is. So that's how to create these windows in your line drawing. I could do the same thing with a wall texture. I could do concrete as a wall texture, and I've done that in the past. I'll show you really quick here. I have an old version. Not that one, sorry. Apparently not that one either. There you go, there's one where I did a concrete texture on the background. Frequently, if you do concrete texture and windows, it becomes a little bit too dark. They're a little bit too stark. So I'm not going to do the concrete texture this year. I'm going to stick with just the windows, but I am going to do the windows on the other drawings so that you can see me do it multiple times. So let me come back to my Illustrator file. I want to do the windows on this particular file down here. There's my elevation. I'm going to get into this group. Hold on a second here. Wrong layer. There we go. Get into this group. There it is. Let me select them. I'll go to Object, Live Paint, and then Make. Then I'll go to my Live Paint tool, and I'm going to fill in with blue where all of these windows are. There they are. Once I have all of those in, I'll go up to Object, Live Paint, Expand. I'm going to back out of my group isolation. I'll use my white arrow or my direct select tool to select one of them. I'll go up to the select menu and say select same fill color. So I have all of them selected. And now I need to create a new layer. And we'll call this Windows 2. There's Windows 2. And I'm going to move all of those objects onto the Windows 2 layer. I'll grab the little square, drag it up to the Windows 2 layer. So now I have the Windows 2 showing. They're all individual objects. But if I select them and go up to Object, Compound Path, Make, it will make them all one. Let me put that fill color back in so you can see it. There it is. They're now all one big object because the paths have been joined together. Once that's the case, I can bring in my image file. I'll go to File and then Place. And I'll drop in the sky. I think it was this sky. I don't remember which one I put in. We'll drop it in here, zoom out a bit. And somehow it didn't like that particular file. Let me get rid of that and try it again. I'm going to go to File and then Place. Let me try a different one. There we go. Zoom out. Make this a little bit smaller. I'm going to hold down Shift to keep it in proportion. Remember my order. The path has to be on top of the linked file. There we go. I'll adjust my sky a little bit. Looks pretty good. With it in this order, compound path, then the linked file. I'm going to select the main layer itself, go to the flyout menu, and say Make Clipping Mask. And it's going to cut it out for that as well. So I had last time, I had adjusted the opacity to like 50%, I think, to make it a little bit lighter. And then I can go back to my layers. I can turn my layer 1 back on, and we'd see the windows in each of these. Oh, looks like maybe this one is a little bit darker. Try 60. I had it at 68. Let's adjust that. Perfect. So I have my windows there. I have my windows here. If I come back to my layers, I can turn on my walls and my floor to give myself a little bit more texture there. I'll press Control 0 to zoom out a little bit. Let me Control minus. There we go. You can see a little bit more. And so now essentially what I have is I have my elevations, but I've emphasized a few things on the elevations. I don't need to do a full-scale collage where everything is filled in. I don't need to fill in all the walls. I don't have to put in concrete. I'm just trying to identify a few things or distinguish a few things. That's what collage work is good at doing. You don't need to overdo it. That's an important thing that people tend to forget. So I've done a little bit, and I think that's good. The next piece that I really need is I need some text or some identifying marks on this particular page. And so when you go to add text, the single biggest thing that people make mistakes on, and the one thing that I will definitely grade you down on, I probably would say I would go as far as grading you down at least a letter grade for doing it, is people love to say, oh, I need text. Okay, this is my north elevation. Let me add some text here. Oh, wait, I can't see that. Oh, well, let me come up into my properties and let's change the font. Oh, I don't know. Let's make it 30 point. No, let's make it bigger than that. Let's make it 72 point. Ah, awesome. Oh, you still can't see it. Sorry. I was on the wrong layer when I created it. And now I managed to just freeze Illustrator. Oh, how nice. Oh, come on. So how convenient. I think there we go. I'm back. All right, good. Let me put that text on its own layer. Should have done that from the beginning. I'll make a layer called text, and I'm going to put it on top of everything else. And I'm going to take my north elevation text, and I'm going to move it up onto that text. There we go. And so now I see it. And so this is something that people do. They say, oh, I need text. Let me put text on. Ah, that looks pretty good on a computer screen, right? Yeah, okay, maybe. When you print this out, north elevation is going to be like this big, okay, when it's 24 by 36 at this point font. The problem here is that when I go to look at it, the only thing I'm going to see when I look at your printed out version is this giant text that says north elevation. It doesn't work. It always distracts somebody from looking at it. You don't need text that big. And it's the biggest mistake young designers make, is they do this and they make their fonts way too big. So they don't need to be this big. It's not a style thing. Just don't do it. Okay? So instead, when we're talking about adding a little bit of text, we're talking about taking this north elevation text and making it no more than 18 point, but realistically somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 14. That's about the right size. It's a lot different. So I could say this is a north elevation. Now maybe I want to add a little bit more underneath it. Maybe I want a line that goes underneath it. And maybe I want to do something like that just to give it a little bit more character. Maybe, you know what, I'm going to lock all the rest of these layers so that I don't keep accidentally selecting them. Okay, maybe I'll move it over a little bit. Maybe I'll extend this out just a little bit. And then maybe underneath it, I would come in and I'd put another little text box. And this time I'd say this is going to be 1/4 inch equals 1 foot. Oops. And that really doesn't need to be quite that big. So I'll go back to my properties and I'll say, you know what, this could be about 10 point. And we'll put that down there like that. This is tastefully done. Not too much. If I press Control-0 and I look at the whole thing, that doesn't distract from my drawings. It's just a little bit of information. Okay? This is a good strategy for doing it. It could be as simple as north elevation. It could have the line. It could have the scale. You could come up with some combination. You could say, instead of having it like that, you could put the north elevate or the scale over here a bit and shorten this down so that it looked like that. Maybe it comes up here a little bit higher. Something like that would work just fine too. To help you guys out a little bit, I have some examples that you can download. If you go to today's exercise and you come down here a little bit under the Part 4 text and annotations, I have a zip file of title blocks, graphic var scales, and notes that you can drop straight into your file. Also, when it comes to picking fonts are rather challenging in terms of what accurately represents your work. The font that I really like is called Frank the Architect. It's by a guy named, I think, Harold, who did a variant of the Tecton bold and created this Frank the Architect. He named it after all the architects named Frank because there's a lot of them. And it's one that I've found is pretty nice. It works pretty nice. It looks like an architect font. It's not overly done. You could create your own font if you had really good lettering. This one, there's a free version that you can download without having to pay for. There's also a paid version that gives you more options and more symbols and that sort of thing. So if you're interested in downloading it for free, I have a link to it right here. Download the free version. There it is. You can download it and install it if you want to. Like I said, this is one that I use fairly frequently. You can, of course, also just use one of the basic fonts in the operating system and work with that as well. The Frank the Architect font is what I've specified on some of these title blocks when they come in. So be aware that it's going to substitute fonts if you don't have that font installed on your particular system. So if I wanted to bring in any of those, I'm going to work on yet another layer. I'll call that layer title block. And title blocks are interesting. If you are doing kind of a working drawing set or an official set of plans, you would have a title block and you'd have information about who you are and who the client is and that sort of thing. If you were doing a presentation that was going to go up on a wall, you may or may not have a title block. Frequently, presentation drawings don't have any title blocks at all because you don't want to constrain what you're doing. You go full bleed and you have big images and that sort of thing. So it's not necessary to put the title block in, but I want to show you the process just in case. In this case, I've already made the title block. So we can go with, when I'm on the title block layer, I can go to File and then Place. And this is in my resources. I have something called, I think it's in Illustrator, title blocks. There we go. And here is a 24 by 36 title block. I'll go ahead and click on Place. And I'm going to pick the upper corner. And there it is. It drops in, which is fine. Once it's in here, though, we're not seeing through to my drawing. So while it's still selected, I'm going to go to the Properties, and I'm going to go to this Effects button. And it's not there. Oh, nice. Sorry, bear with me for a second. I love it when things that I say are going to be there suddenly aren't there anymore. I should be able to change the blending mode. That's what I'm trying to do. And for some reason, it's not letting me do it. There we go. Let me open up Transparency. And with the Transparency window open, I'm going to Window and then Transparency right there. With the Transparency window open, I'm just going to change the blending mode right here from Normal to Multiply. We've done that before in Photoshop. And when I do that, it's going to look right through that white background. So it's the same thing in Photoshop so that I can see my title block. This title block comes in. It's got little double lines that go around. And down here in the lower corner, you can see that I have drawing title, I have sheet numbers, and a client name, client address, etc. If I wanted to edit that, I should be able to double click it. Oh, come on. No. All right, so because it's still a linked file, I might have to embed the linked file to be able to edit it. So bear with me for just a second. All right, give me 1 second. I'm going to bring that in one more time and see if it's, I just missed an option here. I'll go to File, Place. Let me click on the Show Import Options and see if it gives me an option here. So I've checked the Show Import Options. Let me go ahead and Place. Yeah, crop to media, all that's fine. Huh. I wonder if it's under the Links menu. That might be where it is. Like I said, I apologize for this. and go back into multiply, and then let me open up my links menu. All right, it really wants me to edit the original for some reason. So I could do that, but I'm frustrated because I should be able to do it right here in the live version. Let me try one more time. And I'm going to uncheck link here and see if it'll drop the whole thing in for me. OK. So in this case, it's going to. So I don't have Frank the Architect installed, so I'm just going to go ahead and close that. We will switch this into a multiply blending mode. But by unchecking that link option, it's embedding the drawing straight in, which is going to allow me to edit the text. I don't know why it was not letting me do that after the fact. So now that that's been the case, I can come in here. I can double click on the text. There it is. And I could give this a new title. So this would be Yosemite Cabin, for example. And under client name, you get the idea. I could go through and change these as well. The pink is telling me that the font is being substituted. So you may find that you want to take all of these and under properties, change the font. Window, character, where'd it go? There we go. And so I could change this. If I had Frank the Architect installed, that would be fine. But I could also change it to whatever other font that I wanted, like that, and then go through and make your adjustments. So this would be sheet 1 of 1. A few other things like these got off center, so you might need to do some adjustments in the centering. Let's use that. I'm going to go into Window and then Align. So we can center all of those objects. Same thing here. I click one more time on that first one to make it the key object, and then adjust. And then I would fill this other stuff out. So we could say this was, or whatever. You get the idea. Okay? So that would be inserting a title block. Let me press Control-0 so we can see everything again. There we go. This somehow got out of multiply mode. There we go. And let me back my way out of the title block. Like that. So now I have a title block that goes around the page. There were other things that I could bring in. If I went to File and then Place in that same set of files, I had scales. So I could do a drawing scale, 1/4 inch, and place that. And so let me drop that in. There we go. And again, I don't have the font installed, but let me show you what that looks like. So this is one of those graphic bar scales, so that you can scale your drawing. You can drop that in. Obviously, it's looking for the Frank the Architect font. I have another one. If I went to File and then Place, this is my clean 1/4 scale. A little bit more modern in its look. Just a different strategy, different style as it goes through. I can go to File and then Place. Drawing note here. If I were to drop that in, is just the note with this little arrow that points to it. You could drop that in and add a little note. So in this case, I could say, that those are concrete walls. For example, I'm just making stuff up. So if you wanted to put a little note in there, you can do that as well. Let's see, what else? I went back into File and then Place. Wait, I have to get out of isolation mode. The last one was the drawing title. So again, two different options here. This one looks like the thickness of the line is off a little bit. But this is a combination of the drawing title and, come on. A graphic bar scale. What? There it is. Where you have the title and then you have the little graphic bar scale at the end. Just another option that's out there. So I'm just showing you those things because those are pre-made objects that I created for you to help you kind of get things set and to look right. For whatever reason, that title seems really small. I think it needs to get a little bit bigger. So the purpose today is to take your AutoCAD file, bring it into Illustrator, do some collage work. The goal for your assignment is to have it look good. The goal for today's exercise is to practice, if that makes sense. So it doesn't have to look good at the end of the exercise today. However, it should look good before your assignment. One last piece when it comes to the assignment, and that is that you actually have to do a print for me so that you can prove that the plotters, you know how to go to the plotters. I'm going to attempt to do it from here to show you what the options are. I don't know for sure that it'll work. Frequently, the best strategy is to go, the plotter's in the other lab. There's a USB cable from the plotter that you can plug directly into one of the machines. It will reach one of the machines in the other lab and print directly from that machine. That seems to work the best. I don't know whether I can do it remotely here, but at least I should be able to show you the options if it doesn't crash on me. So when it comes to print, I would encourage you to save your work first in Illustrator. It will still save as a PDF file, which is fine. Then once it's done saving, go ahead and open it in Acrobat. So something like this. I'm going to use this last year's version to print. Open it in Acrobat, go to File, and then Print. And under Printer, you're going to choose the GoPrint DJT520C. That's the plotter over in the other room, I think. It might also be this T520C. I don't know. We'll have to go check. Then once you've selected the printer, go to the Properties button here. And this is where you have to specify the size. So our current document size is set at letter. We don't want that. We want an arc D. It's not listed here, so we'll click on More, and we'll choose right here, arc D. And I'll go ahead and say OK. There it is. It's printing right now 24 by 36, but you see it's not oriented correctly. So in this case, we need to adjust it. So I'm going to, let me see here. I should be able to rotate it. Layout and output. There we go. I'm going to go into landscape so that we're printing on a roll and having it show up at the bottom here in its correct orientation. I want it to print in actual size or at 100%, like that. Overlay clipping. OK, all of that's good. We'll go back to paper and quality, ArcD. All of that looks pretty good. For your purposes, you can, right now you can use the speed mode. We don't need to print it out in really high quality. I'm not grading the print version. When you go to print out your final draft for 220, you may want to change this and print in a higher resolution. We're going to use cheap paper, low quality. That's fine. I just want to prove that you guys can do it so that you're capable when you need to go print later on. You're ready. So once all of that's done, go ahead and say OK. It should update in Illustrator to 24 by 36 inches. If it doesn't, go back into your properties and double check one more time that it's set correctly. In the Illustrator, or excuse me, in the Acrobat settings, I really don't like shrink oversized pages. I like it to print actual size. For whatever reason, when you shrink it, you run into problems. So I don't like doing it. I like it at actual size. Okay, all of that seems pretty good. At that point, you're going to go ahead and click on Print, and it should actually print. Yes?
Also, you should change papers to roll.
Thank you, if I didn't already do it. Okay, so when it's on Use Printer Settings, chances are it's already on roll because the roll's loaded. But yes, you can absolutely override it and make sure it's on a roll. That's what you're printing from, will be from a roll. And under paper type, just use the printer settings. We could specify a particular paper type, but it doesn't matter. It's going to be whatever the printer says. And so once I'm done here, I'll go ahead and click Print, and that will, I'm not going to click Print. I don't need to actually print it, but that will allow it to print. Like I said, I think you'll have more success if you use one of the computers over in the other lab where you can actually take the physical USB and plug it in. But you can try it through GoPrint, but the GoPrint system is pretty iffy, which I'm sure by this point in the semester you're already well aware that it's an iffy printing system. So plug it in directly, and you'll have a little bit better luck. Okay? So for your purposes today, go ahead and work on doing some of the collage work. Remember, do what looks best when it comes to printing. You don't have to do everything. You don't have to collage everything. This is just a little bit more enhancement toward your final product. Are there any other questions? No? All right. I'll let you guys start working, and we will pick up next class with SketchUp.